Harold Bennett was 74 years old, walked with a slight limp from a construction accident 30 years earlier, and still woke up every morning before sunrise. Not because he had to, because routine was the only thing that made silence bearable. At 6:15 every morning, he stepped onto the front porch of the small blue house he and his wife Alina had lived in for 42 years. He watered the flowers Alina planted. He trimmed the edges of the lawn carefully. He waved at passing neighbors who rarely waved back anymore. And every morning, Alina watched him from the kitchen window with worried eyes. "Your back's hurting again," she said softly one morning as he came inside. "I'm all right. You don't have to keep doing the yard yourself." Harold smiled faintly. "If I stop moving, I'll rust." Alina forced a smile, but she knew the truth. Harold wasn't afraid of pain. He was afraid of feeling useless. Their son Michael used to help with the lawn every summer before joining the army at 19. Now he was overseas most of the time, stationed in places Harold couldn't pronounce. Sometimes months passed without a call. But Harold never complained. Every Friday, Alina mailed Michael handwritten letters. Every Sunday, Harold mowed the lawn exactly the way Michael used to like it. Straight lines. Perfect edges. "It keeps the place looking alive," Harold always said. Their neighborhood had changed over the years. New families moved in. Expensive cars appeared in driveways. The old people disappeared one by one. Then came the HOA. At first it seemed harmless. Community beautification. Property standards. Neighborhood value protection. That was what the brochures said. But after Vanessa Crowley became HOA president, things changed. Vanessa was 42, sharp-faced, perfectly dressed, and obsessed with control. She walked through the neighborhood like she owned every brick. Nothing escaped her attention. Grass height, mailbox paint, curtains, trash cans, 1 inch too tall, one warning letter, one complaint, one fine. People hated her, but they feared her more. Because Vanessa knew exactly how to weaponize rules. And she especially targeted people who couldn't fight back. The Bennetts became her favorite target. It started with a warning taped to their mailbox. Grass exceeds allowable height limit. Harold stared at it in confusion. The lawn looked fine. He had mowed it 2 days earlier. Alina read the paper carefully. "Half an inch," she whispered. "What?" "It says the grass exceeded the limit by half an inch." Harold laughed quietly. "You've got to be kidding." But Vanessa wasn't kidding. 3 days later, another notice arrived. "Edging non-compliant." Then another. "Flower beds overgrown." Then another. "Paint fading on front shutters." Each notice included fines. $50, $75, $100. Alina sat at the kitchen table, staring at the stack of papers. "We can't keep paying these." Harold stayed silent. Their savings were already thin from medical bills. Alina's heart medication alone cost hundreds every month. Still, Harold tried to cooperate. He repainted the shutters himself, despite his aching shoulder. He trimmed every bush. He measured the grass twice before mowing. But the notices kept coming. One afternoon, Harold spotted Vanessa standing across the street with a clipboard. She pointed toward their lawn while speaking to another HOA member. Harold walked over carefully. "Excuse me," he said politely. "Can you tell me exactly what the issue is?" Vanessa barely looked at him. "The neighborhood standards are public record." "I understand that, but I'm trying to fix whatever problem there is." "The problem," Vanessa said coldly, "is consistency." Harold frowned. I don't understand. She finally looked him in the eye. This neighborhood is changing, Mr. Bennett. Some homes are lowering property values. Harold understood immediately, and it hurt more than he expected. You think our home's a problem. I think neglected appearances spread. Neglected. The word echoed in his head all evening. Because this house wasn't neglected. This house held birthdays, Christmas mornings, military send-offs, hospital recoveries, 42 years of survival. But to Vanessa, it was just an eyesore. That night, Eleanor found Harold sitting alone in the garage, staring at old army photos of Michael. He'd be furious if he saw this, Eleanor whispered. Harold nodded slowly. That's why we're not telling him. Weeks passed. The pressure grew worse. The HOA began adding late fees. Then legal threats. One morning, Eleanor opened the mailbox and nearly collapsed. Notice of property lien review. Her hands trembled. They can't do this. Harold took the paper quietly. But even he looked shaken. If unpaid balances continue, Eleanor read aloud, further legal action may result in foreclosure proceedings. Foreclosure. Over grass. Over flowers. Over shutters. That night, Eleanor cried in bed after Harold fell asleep. She thought he didn't notice. But he did. And for the first time in years, Harold felt powerless. The next morning, he worked in the yard for 6 straight hours, trying to make everything perfect. By noon, sweat soaked through his shirt. His back throbbed. His hands shook. But he kept going. Then Vanessa arrived. She parked slowly at the curb and stepped out holding her clipboard. Harold forced himself upright. I'm fixing it, he said immediately. Vanessa glanced around. You missed the side edging. Harold blinked in disbelief. What? The side edging near the fence line is uneven. Harold stared at the tiny strip of grass. You're threatening foreclosure over this. Vanessa crossed her arms. Rules exist for everyone. Eleanor came rushing outside. Please, she said, we're trying. Vanessa's expression didn't change. Trying and complying are different things. Then she handed them another citation. $200. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. Harold clenched the paper so tightly it crumpled in his fist. Vanessa turned and walked away without another word. That night Harold skipped dinner. Eleanor found him sitting on the porch in darkness. You can't let her break you, she whispered. Harold's voice cracked slightly. I spent my whole life providing for this family. You still do. And now some woman with a clipboard can take our home. Eleanor sat beside him quietly. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Harold looked toward the old oak tree in the yard. Michael planted that when he was 12. Eleanor smiled sadly. He cried because the hole was too deep. Harold chuckled softly. He said the tree was crooked. He wanted to dig it up and start over. They both fell silent again. Then Eleanor asked the question neither of them wanted to ask. What if we lose the house? Harold had no answer. 3 days later, things became worse. Someone uploaded photos of their yard to the HOA community page. Close-up pictures. Mocking captions. Lawn of the month. Retirement means giving up. Neighbors began whispering. People stared when Harold walked outside. Eleanor stopped checking the mail entirely. Then one afternoon, Harold overheard 2 teenagers laughing near the sidewalk. Vanessa says they'll probably be gone by summer. Harold stood frozen. Gone by summer. That evening, he quietly entered the garage and opened an old wooden chest. Inside were Michael's letters from deployment. Photos. medals, a folded American flag from Harold's own father's funeral. Harold picked up a picture of Michael in uniform. Strong, proud, fearless. Harold whispered softly to the photo. You'd know what to do. The next morning, Alina woke to the sound of Harold coughing violently outside. She rushed out and found him collapsed beside the mower. Harold. Neighbors peeked through windows, but nobody came. Alina struggled to help him sit up. His face had gone pale. An ambulance arrived 20 minutes later. Exhaustion, dehydration, severe muscle strain. The doctor warned him clearly. No heavy labor for at least several weeks. But Harold's first question was about the lawn. Alina finally broke down in the hospital parking lot. This is insane, she cried. They're destroying us. That night, for the first time, she called Michael. The phone rang several times. Then his voice answered. Mom. Hearing his voice shattered her composure immediately. Michael. Instant silence. Mom, what happened? She tried to stay calm. But once she started talking, everything poured out. The fines. The threats. The humiliation. Harold collapsing. Michael listened without interrupting once. When she finished, there was only silence. Then one quiet question. Dad's in the hospital. Yes. Another silence. Then Michael spoke again. Don't tell Dad I'm coming. 2 days later, Harold returned home exhausted. He moved slower now. Even walking to the mailbox seemed painful. But he still tried to straighten the flower beds. That afternoon, a black SUV stopped in front of the house. Harold looked up slowly. The driver's door opened. Combat boots stepped onto the pavement first. Then a tall man in military uniform emerged. Harold froze. Michael Bennett had changed. Broader shoulders, sharper eyes, scars near his jawline. But the moment he smiled, he was still the same boy who planted crooked trees. Hey, Dad. Harold's eyes filled instantly. Michael. Before Harold could say another word, Michael hugged him tightly. Not carefully, not politely. Like a son who finally realized how fragile his father had become. Alina cried openly beside them. Michael stepped back slowly and looked at the house. Then at the lawn. Then at the stack of HOA notices visible through the front window. His expression changed. What exactly did they do? Harold immediately tried to minimize everything. It's not that bad. Michael looked at Alina. She said nothing. That told him everything. Over the next hour, Michael read every notice carefully. Every fine, every late fee, every threat. By the end, his jaw tightened. This is harassment. Harold sighed. They've got rules. Michael looked at him sharply. No, they've got targets. That evening, Michael walked the neighborhood quietly. People recognized the uniform instantly. Curtains moved. Doors cracked open. Whispers spread. Vanessa noticed too. She spotted Michael while driving home and slowed her car. The next morning, Michael woke early and began fixing the yard himself. Vast, precise, efficient. By noon, the property looked immaculate. Fresh mulch, perfect edging, trimmed hedges. Even the old mailbox looked restored. Harold watched from the porch. You don't have to do all this. Michael kept working. Yeah, he said quietly, I do. Then Vanessa arrived again. She stepped out holding another citation form. But this time, Michael walked toward her before she reached the mailbox. Can I help you? Vanessa's tone sharpened immediately. And you are owner's son. She glanced at his uniform briefly. Well, your parents remain in violation of multiple HOA standards. Michael extended his hand. Show me. Vanessa hesitated, then handed him the paperwork. Michael read it carefully. You cited them yesterday for dead grass patches. Yes. Michael slowly pointed toward the lawn. Where? Vanessa glanced around. Well, previously observed areas. No, Michael interrupted calmly. Show me. For the first time, Vanessa seemed uncomfortable. Compliance reviews are ongoing. Michael stared at her evenly. My father collapsed trying to meet these standards. Vanessa crossed her arms again. That's unfortunate, but emotional arguments don't change policy. Michael nodded slowly. Good, because I'm not making an emotional argument. Then he pulled out his phone. I'm recording this conversation now. Vanessa's expression shifted instantly. Michael continued calmly. I spent 8 years in military logistics and compliance operations. I'm very familiar with documentation procedures. Vanessa remained silent. So let's document everything properly, Michael said, starting with selective enforcement. Neighbors had started watching from nearby driveways. Vanessa noticed. Michael continued. The Henderson house has peeling paint. He pointed down the street. The Collins yard exceeds grass height. Another direction. And 3 homes on this block violate mailbox uniformity standards. Vanessa's face tightened. You're being confrontational. No, Michael replied calmly. I'm being thorough. The crowd of neighbors slowly grew larger. For years, everyone had stayed silent. Now someone was finally pushing back. Vanessa tried to regain control. If your parents fail to comply financially, legal action will continue. Michael smiled faintly. Perfect. That answer confused her. Then Michael handed her a business card. Attorney Daniel Reeves. Military Civil Rights Division. Vanessa's confidence visibly faltered. My parents received this after I made one phone call. Her eyes narrowed. You contacted a lawyer. Michael stepped closer. No, I contacted 3. The neighborhood became completely silent. Michael's voice remained calm. You targeted elderly residents with escalating penalties while ignoring identical violations elsewhere. That's selective enforcement, intimidation, and potentially elder harassment. Vanessa tried speaking again. But Michael kept going. And if foreclosure threats were issued disproportionately against vulnerable homeowners, things get much uglier legally. Vanessa's face lost color. Neighbors exchanged stunned looks. Because suddenly, the balance of power had changed. Michael wasn't emotional. He wasn't yelling. He was disciplined, controlled, precise. And somehow that scared Vanessa more. She grabbed the clipboard tightly. This discussion is over. Michael nodded. Great, future communication goes through legal counsel. Then he added one final sentence. And one more thing. Vanessa stopped. My father defended this country longer than you've been abusing neighborhood bylaws. Complete silence. Vanessa got into her car and drove away immediately. The moment she disappeared, neighbors started approaching slowly. One woman spoke first. She fined us for our curtains. Another man nodded. She threatened my mother over flower pots. An older veteran raised his hand quietly. She's been doing this for years. Michael listened carefully. And over the next week, everything exploded. More residents came forward. Photos, emails, threat letters. Evidence piled up quickly. Michael organized everything methodically. The story spread through local community groups online. Then local reporters became interested. An elderly couple threatened with foreclosure over minor lawn violations. Veteran son returns home and exposes HOA abuse. The headline practically wrote itself. Vanessa tried fighting back, but every statement she released only worsened public outrage. Then the hidden twist surfaced. A former HOA treasurer contacted Michael privately. "I think you should see these. Financial records, private emails, unauthorized contractor payments, selective fine quotas." Vanessa hadn't just been enforcing rules. She had been profiting. The HOA hired landscaping companies connected to her cousin. Homes that accumulated enough violations were pressured into expensive, mandatory correction services. The Bennetts had never been random victims. They were chosen because they looked weak. Easy. Alone. Michael stared at the evidence in disbelief. Then anger slowly settled into something colder. Focus. Within days, attorneys launched formal investigations. Residents demanded emergency HOA meetings. News vans appeared outside the neighborhood entrance. Vanessa stopped walking outside entirely. But the real moment came during the public HOA hearing. The room overflowed with residents. Vanessa sat stiffly at the front table beside nervous board members. Then Harold entered with Alina and Michael. The room stood up. Actually stood up. Harold looked stunned. Neighbors applauded softly as he walked to the microphone. His hands trembled slightly. Not from fear. From emotion. Harold cleared his throat. "I spent most of my life believing good neighbors look out for each other." Silence filled the room. "I thought maybe we had done something wrong." Alina wiped tears quietly. "But the truth is, we were embarrassed into silence." Many residents lowered their eyes. Harold continued. "My wife cried herself to sleep worrying we'd lose our home." Vanessa stared downward. "And I nearly worked myself into a hospital bed, trying to satisfy people who never intended to show mercy." The room remained completely silent. Then Harold looked toward Michael. "But my son reminded me something important." Michael met his father's eyes. Bullies survive when good people stay quiet. A woman in the audience began crying. Then Harold finished softly. "This house isn't valuable because of the lawn. It's valuable because of the life built inside it." The room erupted in applause. 3 HOA board members resigned that night. Vanessa attempted to leave immediately afterward, but reporters surrounded her outside. Questions flew rapidly. Did you profit from HOA violations? Did you target elderly homeowners? Are lawsuits pending? For the first time, Vanessa had no answers. Within a month, formal investigations removed her from the HOA permanently. Multiple lawsuits followed. The HOA dissolved several enforcement policies entirely. And the Bennetts? Their fines disappeared. Their lien threats vanished. But something even more important changed. The neighborhood started acting like a neighborhood again. People visited Harold and Alina regularly. Teenagers helped mow lawns for elderly residents. Veterans organized community repair days. Neighbors actually spoke to one another. One evening, Harold stood outside watching the sunset while Michael repaired the old fence. "You going back soon?" Harold asked quietly. Michael nodded. "Probably." Harold looked down for a moment, then softly said the thing fathers rarely say aloud. "I'm proud of you." Michael smiled faintly. "I learned from you." Harold shook his head. No, you learned how to fight harder. Michael looked toward the old oak tree, swaying gently in the yard. The tree still crooked. Harold laughed for the first time in months. Yeah. Michael smiled. But it stayed standing. And for the first time in a long time, so did they.